Hello and welcome to the No Huddle College Football Show. Ryan McCormick here with Quincy, Jean Louise. Quincy, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great.
Absolutely. So we are back here. We're doing our second video of the year. You may have followed us earlier in the year. We did a live video on Instagram. Now we are doing these pre-recorded just to get some more insight from some of our other writers. I'm going to be talking about the college football bowls and the championship games that are coming up this week. We've got every single conference finally having their own championship. I'm going to be primarily talking about the Power Five. Obviously, the SEC being the big one this week, a potential playoff semifinal here. And then a couple other big ones. Before we get into that, Quincy, let's go ahead and kind of recap this past week. We had some big games. Ohio State, Michigan, obviously the big one. LSU, Texas A&M, another exciting one there. What were your biggest takeaways from this past weekend in college football?
My biggest takeaways, I had two really big takeaways for me. The first one technically wasn't over the weekend, but the Oklahoma and West Virginia game. I felt like Oklahoma will probably end up being a conference champion with one loss, and that loss being at a neutral site. But that defense, I've never seen so many wide open receivers, and I don't think that defense is going to hold up even if they somehow make the playoff. And I also wanted to talk about Michigan real quick. I feel like Michigan is a playoff team. I feel like they're probably the fourth, fifth, maybe even sixth best team in the nation. But something's got to be done with Harbaugh. You just cannot go 0-4 against Ohio State, against an Ohio State team that does not have good defense themselves, and you cannot give up almost 70 points.
Absolutely, yeah. Definitely an exciting game there Friday night with Oklahoma. And let me ask you, because a lot of people talk about the Big 12 defense in particular for that game. Do you think it's more because the defense was bad, or do you think the offenses are just that good they score?
Well, I mean, in general, I think it's a combination of both. But with that specific game, there were receivers just running past defensive backs. It's terrible technique. They're not. If you're gonna bail, then bail. If you're playing cover three, get back. But they're just. It was really unfortunate to watch that kind of game. I just thought it was just terrible defensive play.
Absolutely, it's really a game, in my opinion. West Virginia outplayed Oklahoma. The two fumble for touchdowns. If you take those away, West Virginia wins that by 10. So really unfortunate for the Mountaineers. They have had a good season there, but it's going to be Oklahoma and Texas facing off in that game. And then let me ask you, did you catch much of the LSU A&M game at all?
Yeah, I was watching the Notre Dame game, and as I was watching that game, because it started like an hour later, I went to the LSU game in the fourth quarter, and I was like, I'll just watch this till the end and go back to Notre Dame. But 7 overtimes, that never happened. But that was honestly the best game probably I've ever seen, college football-wise.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely one of the more exciting ones of this year, up there with the Georgia-Oklahoma game from last year.
Yeah.
Definitely exciting when you get 7 overtimes, especially the way that one went back and forth. But kind of heading back to the Big 12 is where we were talking there. We're going to bring one of our other writers in, Michael Carano, here in a second. He's going to give us a few breakdowns of Oklahoma and Texas. As you mentioned, Oklahoma already played Texas. Texas winning that one in a nail-biter. I fully expect it to be a similar game there, very close. We're going to go ahead and turn it over and bring in Michael to give us some breakdowns. Go ahead, Michael.
Thanks, guys. I think two big keys for Oklahoma in this game is firstly going to be how their DBs can match up with the big Texas receivers. When they played them in the regular season, Colin Johnson and Lil Jordan Humphrey were ripping them for big yardage. The DBs got to step up if they want to win. Another one is going to be establishing the run game early. When this offense is humming, it's when they're running the ball well. This may be the best O-line in the country, and this offense runs as this O-line and running game runs. 2 for Texas is going to be Sam Ehlinger on the ground. Him on third and fourth down in short yardage is killer. He's a great runner, and he's a big guy. Another one is going to be keeping the ball away from Oklahoma in ball control. Oklahoma has the most explosive offense in the country, and they can't score if they're not on the field. That'll be a key for them as well. And, in total, I think it's going to be a classic Big 12 shootout, tight game, but I think OU will pull away toward the end and win it 54-42. Thanks.
Definitely great insight there, Michael. Appreciate it. I fully expect it to be a high-scoring game as well. Quincy, what are your thoughts on this one? Obviously, we have a rematch of a very exciting game so far. Give us some keys and a prediction there.
Well, I think the keys in this game, I've got Kyler Murray. Sometimes I think people forget that he is a first-year starter because of his age, but he's never been in this kind of situation before. I know he played Texas already, but this is a conference championship game. I don't believe in Texas's defense. I don't believe in their pass rush. So I've actually got Oklahoma winning by a score of 48-35.
Mm-hmm. I definitely agree with that. I think it's Kyler Murray's game to lose, and this could be his Heisman moment if he can pull it off. We'll get into that later, though. I think overall, take both quarterbacks out. Texas is probably the better team across the board, but Kyler Murray definitely a big step up from Ellinger there. Texas, no disrespect to him, but it's going to be up to Kyler Murray. If he plays well enough, I think he'll win. I've got Texas 35. We'll say Oklahoma 42. So Sooners by a touchdown there. You may get a little more defense in this one than the West Virginia game, but it'll still be a shootout. And then flipping over to another game, probably the most lopsided conference championship here, the ACC. We've got Pitt versus Clemson. Clemson is obviously the heavy favorite here, undefeated, number 2 in the country. Pittsburgh is a team that a lot of people didn't expect to even make 6 games this year. Kind of a surprise and a good story there to see them bouncing back. We're going to go ahead and turn it over to Matt Archie now. He's going to come in, give us some predictions and some keys to seeing if Pittsburgh can somehow stop Clemson here. Matt, go ahead.
Hey guys, this is No Huddle Sports ACC Preview. I'm Matt Archie. We're going to be talking about Clemson versus Pitt. For Pitt to win, they're pretty much going to have to play a perfect game. They're going to have to be able to slow down Travis Etienne, who's carrying the ball at around an 8.1 to 8.2 yards a clip. He's got 19 total touchdowns on the ground this year. You're going to have to force Trevor Lawrence to throw the ball through the air. And the key for Clemson to win is just do what you've been doing all year. Run the ball, set up the pass, play amazing defense, and just get after the quarterback. My preview, Clemson 56, Pitt 17. Thanks.
Yeah, definitely great insight there, Matt. Appreciate it as always. Quincy, like I said, going to be lopsided. Not a lot of people taking Pittsburgh in this one. Do you see any way that Pittsburgh has a chance in this one at all?
I think Pittsburgh definitely has a chance to play with them for about 5 minutes, and then I think it'll be over from there. I don't think Pittsburgh is the kind of team that can come back from a deficit. I don't think they've got enough firepower on offense compared to the receivers that Clemson has on the outside, and with Etienne just being one of the best running backs in the country. I think that game's probably going to be over by halftime, and I've got Clemson running away with it 42-10.
Yeah, I agree there. Pittsburgh played Notre Dame close this year. They've played some other good teams close. If they do have a shot at this one, they're going to have to keep it close, keep it low scoring. They're going to have to pound the ball and hope to wear down that fantastic Clemson defense. They're going to have to pull out a couple of trick plays and get them to work. They could also take the Syracuse approach and try to get the Clemson quarterback injured there. But without that, I don't see them having any shot. I think they could keep it close for about a half. Clemson's going to have everything to lose here, so they may be a little more timid. Even with the loss, they still may make the playoffs if enough right things happen. But I've got Clemson here 49-17, pulling away in the second half. Third game that we're going to talk about here, we're going to head out west to the Pac-12 championship. Kind of a surprise last week in the Snow Bowl with the Apple Cup, Washington State. Definitely an unfortunate circumstances for Washington State being such a pass-heavy team to have that weather. It's hard to win with that offense, when you're in a blizzard. But no discredit to Washington. They're also a very good team. We've got the Huskies facing off against Utah, the winners of the Pac-12 South. I would say Washington is probably the favorite across the board, but this one could be a little closer. Utah is definitely a good team there. To talk about Pac-12, we're going to bring in Ryan Melton. He's going to give us some insights there and his prediction for it.
This is the other Ryan from No Huddle Sports. I'm going to be giving a quick little preview and prediction for the Pac-12 title game. Washington and Utah actually met in Week 3 of the regular season, where Washington won 21-7. I think this is going to be a lot of the same. Utah is actually starting a freshman quarterback by the name of Jason Shelley, who has looked good over the past few weeks, but since he's been under center, they have not played a defense that is on the same level as Washington's. Washington has only given up 9 passing touchdowns all year, and I don't expect them to get beat by a freshman in what is going to be the conference's biggest game of the year. I think that Washington's defense is going to cause some issues. I think they're going to force some turnovers, and ultimately, I think they're going to be the reason why Washington wins this game. If you're Utah, I think you need to get creative with your offensive play calls and get the ball into your running back, Zach Moss's hands. Early and often, I think you got to try to create a little bit of breathing room for the freshman under center. Ultimately, I'm going to go with Washington winning this one 20-10, and it should be a pretty entertaining contest.
Yeah, definitely should be an interesting one out west. Washington and Utah both pretty evenly matched there. I do have the Huskies pulling away here. Miles Gaskin, Jake Browning, a lot of offensive firepower there. This one could be a very low-scoring game. Hopefully the weather's a little bit better than it was up in Washington last week. This one should be a little bit better weather. But I think it'll be a low-scoring game. Both teams have great defenses. I think the Washington offense is just going to be a little too much for Utah, and it's going to get them over the edge. I like Washington 21-13 in this one. Quincy, let's go ahead and turn it over to you. What are your thoughts on it?
I definitely like Washington in this matchup, like you said, with Miles Gaskin and Jake Browning. Even though I'm not the biggest fan of Jake Browning, I don't think he'll have to face a defense that will intimidate him in ways we've seen before. And I think Utah has had to deal with so many injuries this season. I just don't see them being able to compete for 4 quarters with Washington, especially since they've already lost to Washington recently. So I've got Washington winning this about 28-17.
Yeah, definitely should be a fun one there. Neither team is going to be playing for a playoff bid at this point. But still a lot on the stake. Obviously, the winner's probably going to the Rose Bowl. I don't see the loser getting a New Year's Six Bowl. So definitely a lot at stake there for these two teams. And then heading on to the Big Ten, we've got kind of surprisingly Ohio State and Northwestern. Ohio State not as big of a surprise, but a lot of people I know had Michigan going into the week. Northwestern, kind of one of those teams who's been really up and down, losing to Akron at home earlier in the year. Akron, finishing towards the bottom of the MAC. They also barely pulled out a win against Purdue earlier in the year. Then they come back to play Notre Dame tough. They beat Wisconsin. They beat Iowa. Somehow they managed to win that Big Ten West, which is kind of down this year. But nonetheless, an impressive season for the Wildcats up there. And similar to Clemson and Pittsburgh, Ohio State with a lot to play for. They still have a very good chance of the playoff. Northwestern really doesn't at all, but a Rose Bowl berth definitely on the line for Northwestern. They love to upset Ohio State here. For this one, we're going to bring in Shaun Davis. Hopefully he's not too upset, a Michigan fan. We're going to go ahead and bring him in and see what his thoughts are on this game. So Shaun, take it away.
Thanks, guys. So on Saturday, Ohio State showed that they have more speed than anybody in the conference, and that's going to be true against Northwestern. So I think the first key for them is just going to be to get their offensive weapons in space like they did against Michigan and kind of exploit the Northwestern defense. And then they're going to need to control the line of scrimmage on defense. And if they can do that, they're going to cruise to a victory and set themselves up with a college football playoff potential berth. Northwestern needs to keep the ball away from Ohio State. They need to have long touchdown drives on offense. And the less Ohio State has the ball, the less they can score. And then on defense, Northwestern needs to get off the field on third down, and they need to rush Haskins. He wasn't rushed at all against Michigan. And that's how they scored 62 points. I think Ohio State's going to dominate with their speed. They have better athletes than Northwestern like they did last week against Michigan. And I think they put up a lot of points. They win 42-24.
Great insight there, Shaun. Definitely an exciting one with a lot on the line there for the Buckeyes. Quincy, what are your thoughts? I know you had Ohio State winning this past week, correct, against Michigan?
Yeah, I did.
Mm-hmm. And then what do you think is going to happen here? Obviously, Ohio State's going to be the heavy favorite going into it. Probably the most impressive they've looked coming off of this game against Michigan. Do you think they have enough to pull it off and run away with it?
Oh, I definitely do. I think the College Football Playoff Committee told us before that conference championships really don't matter, and I think this is a perfect example of why. I don't think Ohio State is one of the 4 best teams in the country, but I do think that they are substantially better than a 4-loss Northwestern team, a team that I don't think will be able to keep up with Ohio State. Ohio State doesn't have a ton of playmakers, in my opinion, offensively, but Dwayne Haskins, I think, is going to be a difference maker in that game. I just really see Ohio State running away with it and making things interesting, once it comes to the selection committee's decision. So I've got Ohio State winning 38-13.
Yeah, definitely some great insight. I think it's going to take a lot from Ohio State to make the playoffs. If Oklahoma wins, I honestly don't see it happening. If Oklahoma loses, however, which is very good chance of that, with a tough matchup against Texas, Ohio State is probably going to be the favorite if they can handle things against Northwestern. Remember a couple years ago when they won it all, they came in and beat Wisconsin by like 60 in the Big Ten championship. I'm not sure if they need to do that again, but I think they need to win this by at least 3 touchdowns to have a shot. A good Northwestern team, it's not going to be as great of a win as Texas is going to be if Oklahoma can beat them. But nonetheless, Northwestern, very scrappy team, very well coached there by Pat Fitzgerald. They're a team that you don't want to let them stick around. They played Michigan tough. Like I said, they played Notre Dame tough. They're gonna give Ohio State a fight here. I think they'll keep it close for a while. I wouldn't be surprised if Northwestern heads into the halftime up. But like you said, Ohio State definitely more talented, a better team than Northwestern overall. I think they're going to pull away. I actually see this being a very close game here, at least closer than people think. I've got Ohio State winning this 31-23, and a close one there. But nonetheless, should be a fun one. Now we turn our attention to the biggest game of the weekend, a rematch of last year's national championship. We've got the undefeated number 1 ranked Alabama Crimson Tide facing off against your Georgia Bulldogs. 1-loss Bulldogs currently ranked 5th. They'll probably jump up to 4th in this week's poll once they come out. Should be a fun one. We've got Shea Brennaman, who's going to give us some insight. She's an Auburn fan, so she's going to have some good perspective from both teams. Going to probably pick both teams to lose in this one, and then we'll turn it back to you to give you some insight on the Bulldogs. So let's go ahead and turn it over to Shea with her insight and predictions.
Hey guys, it's good to see y'all again. I'd like to first start this off by saying that if Georgia does somehow manage to win this game against Alabama, then Georgia will deserve to be in the college football playoff. Now, beating Alabama is going to be a really heavy task for Georgia. I have 0 keys to give Alabama because, quite frankly, they already have all the keys. This game is Georgia's to lose. And the biggest thing that's going to get in their way is Alabama's defense. Alabama's defense is so powerful that they can stop any offense they're faced up against. They make any team they match up against one-dimensional. That is horrible news for Georgia. Georgia is heavily predicated on the run. They're going to have to use Elijah Holyfield and DeAndre Swift in this game, but they're also going to have to make big plays in the air. They're going to have to develop a short passing game. And quite frankly, they're going to have to do some things that they're just downright uncomfortable with if they want to throw that Alabama defense off. Aside from making a multifaceted offense, they're going to have to dominate the clock. That is going to be the biggest key for Georgia in this game. You can't give Alabama's offense any time of possession at all. Saturday, they faced off against Auburn, best defense they'd seen all season. Third quarter, they scored 3 touchdowns in 6 minutes. That offense works fast. Georgia's defense, if they want to stop them, they can. They're going to have to slow them down. Tua, he's the quarterback at the helm, probably this year's Heisman Trophy winner. He can throw it to anybody. He has the quickest release in college football. He can also run. That offense is very lethal, and when it's working well, it's working really well. Super effective. I don't think that this game is going to be very close. I think this is the best Alabama team assembled since the era of Bear Bryant. And I think Alabama's probably going to win this game by double digits. My final score prediction is going to be Alabama 48, Georgia 28.
Appreciate that, Shea. I know it's going to be a hard one for you to watch there, with your Auburn Tigers having a tough year. But like I said, Quincy, you're a Georgia fan. Obviously, they're having a very good year despite the one loss to, a very good LSU team on the road. Going to be a tough one. Alabama's definitely the clear favorite here, in a lot of people's mind, the better team. But the better team doesn't always win. What do you think Georgia needs to do to turn this around and beat the Crimson Tide?
Well, I think LSU against Alabama showed us the blueprint, but I think they only followed it halfway. That defense of LSU kept them in the game until the fourth quarter. The only problem was, well, 2 problems essentially. One, the offensive line could not have blocked a troll on Twitter at any point during that game. It was atrocious. And 2, Jake Browning wasn't able to make enough plays. I don't think LSU had enough playmakers. The difference is Georgia is built exactly like LSU and Alabama on defense, but nothing like LSU on offense, and almost exactly like Alabama on offense. I think Jake Fromm is going to be able to make a lot of the throws he likes, some of those quick out routes with, being able to a 3-step drop, plant his back foot, and fire it in there. I also really like, even though the offensive line for Georgia has had a bunch of injury issues, I like Holyfield and Swift and all those guys being able to run against Alabama, because I think this is the first time that somebody's going to be able to match them physically. I think a lot of people assume that Alabama's going to run away with this one, but I just think these 2 teams are built very similarly. I think they've got, it's essentially like looking in a mirror at this point. And also, the game is in Atlanta, and I think, like you saw last year, it's almost going to be a home game for Georgia, probably about 65-35. So I think that's going to swing Georgia's way. So I've actually got Georgia winning this one 28-24.
Yeah, absolutely. It should be an interesting one there, being in the Georgia Dome. The Bulldogs have played in there so many times in the last couple of years, with the SEC Championship, the National Championship. Definitely familiar with that stadium up until this point. And like you said, the blueprint is out there, whether that be LSU's defense against Alabama's offense, or even the Citadel's offense against Alabama's defense. Maybe pull a few tricks out of the Citadel's bag. They've played them tougher than anybody, it seems like, this year. And then even last year's National Championship game, for the first 3 quarters, Georgia dominated that game. And then they, kind of let things fall apart. Tua took over. If they can continue to do what they did in that game and finish it, that's going to be the key. I think this is one of the weaker Alabama defenses we've seen over the last couple of years. Still very strong. No doubt, probably the best offense we've seen at Alabama under Nick Saban. Definitely the best quarterback we've seen there. I think the key for this one is going to be making Alabama one-dimensional. If they can stop the run, which I think is a little bit weaker than the pass game, they could have a chance. Georgia with a good secondary there. I think they can, find a way to limit Alabama there. And then on the other side of the ball, just pounding the rock. You've got Swift and Holyfield in the backfield. You've got a good offensive line as well as a good quarterback there with Fromm. If they can stay balanced themselves, they can pound it, establish the run. I think that's going to be how they beat Alabama. I see this one being a very high-scoring game for SEC standards, actually. I think both teams are going to be coming out firing. I like Alabama, sort of disappoints you there. I do like the Crimson Tide, and I'm not not just being biased. I think they're the better team. I think they're slightly better coached than Georgia at this point. No disrespect to Kirby. I like Alabama winning this one 41-38 in a very close one. Definitely going to come down to the wire. Wouldn't be surprised though if Georgia wins this. Definitely going to be interesting if that happens. One loss Alabama could get very interesting there. But nonetheless, should be a very exciting game. With that, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up here. We've got all of our predictions in. Go ahead and leave a comment on our video, either on YouTube where we're going to upload it, or on our Twitter accounts at @no_no_huddle_sports or @no_huddle_CFB, our college football page. Let us know your thoughts on some of these games. Let us know your predictions. Definitely going to be an exciting week. We may be back for another episode during bowl season. We'll see how that goes. And besides that, Quincy, you got anything else for us that you want to leave the folks with?
Just go Dogs.
Absolutely. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Definitely appreciate the supports and the views, and have a good one.